I said this before, but like the American mind cannot comprehend Emilia Pérez the way that Europeans can. It's sort of like
this has been my reaction from the beginning. Where do you think we are with Best Picture? I feel like I'm bracing for Emilia Pérez, but that's maybe giving the Globes a little bit too much of sway. What do you think?
Yeah, I would agree. I would say it's not that Emilia Pérez, I don't think, is now the untouchable frontrunner, but I think we can now say that it is, for being polite, it's a frontrunner. It has sort of solidified its dominance. It has sort of shown that it is a real thing, which was kind of with a lot of these sort of Netflix movies. Because you don't have any data, like you're just kind of like, are these real? Are they not? Is it pundits? Is it hype? And I think this was kind of like, no, this is a real thing. So it doesn't mean that like Emilia Pérez is gonna just waltz to the front of everything, but I think it's definitely in the mix in a way that it was not maybe 2 weeks ago, especially the way other stuff's been going, where it's very clear that, I said this before, but like the American mind cannot comprehend Emilia Pérez the way that Europeans can. It's sort of like
this has been my reaction from the beginning. But you keep making that point, and I think it's a really good one, because I think with Emilia Pérez, the temptation is just to be like, well, everybody on my social media seems to hate it, so what's going on? But I think you're right in the fact that like there is an increasing European influence with the Academy, and that could definitely be reflected with what we saw at the Golden Globes that last night. But I also feel like I think there are probably like at least 4 movies that I would say have like a chance to, come out ahead in Best Picture. I think The Brutalist certainly had a great showing last night, and really kind of, you can envision it, right? You can envision The Brutalist winning it all. But I think Anora is not out of it, and I think in a race where like a bunch of movies are splitting the vote, I'm not counting out Conclave, because Conclave feels like a compromise choice if ever I heard one.
No, exactly. I think one of the things that was interesting about last night is that the 2 big winners, The Brutalist and Emilia Pérez, are not preferential ballot movies, right? They are real, love them or hate them, love them or leave it. Whereas then you have Anora and Conclave, which are both a little more consensus-y, a little more popular, a little more across the board liked. And interestingly, one of the things I always say is that the route to Best Picture runs through director or screenplay. Brutalist, obviously, path, right? Corbet. Picture. Emilia Pérez, you got to kind of squint. You think, okay, maybe they give it adapted. Maybe ODR beats Corbet. But Conclave, adapted screenplay. Anora, original screenplay. Those are very plausible. Like there is still, I would say Anora maybe didn't have the best night. Obviously it didn't have the best night. It won nothing. But it's not, I would say it's not out of the race. I would say there are people sort of prematurely writing obituaries for Anora. And I would say maybe hold off on that. I think Anora, especially, Anora is not a movie that benefits from seeming like a front runner, I would say. Anora is a movie that kind of benefits from this kind of underdog charm. And I think in a way, getting shut out of the Globes kind of puts it in a more comfortable position. Whereas if it had won 4 trophies and been like, wow, everyone loves Anora, then it's kind of like
you're playing defense.
The
other thing to note with Anora is one of the places it was most likely to win would have been screenplay, and the Globes only have the one screenplay category, and the Oscars obviously split it into original and adapted. So that's, it's not necessarily an asterisk, but it's one of the, like, keep it in mind.
No, exactly. And that's why the Globes screenplay race is almost like those nominations are kind of a good indication of what they really, really like, because there's only 5. But speaking of screenplay, I think Conclave came out in also in a good way, where we had maybe 30 minutes of being like, oh, is Conclave going to sweep the night? And then that didn't happen. But it's still, it's out there. It's on people's radars. It has a little bit of a feel of a winner. They got to make one acceptance speech.
Nikki Glazer's most remembered joke, at least by the Vulture chat room, was the popular bit,
Yeah,
which,
exactly.
So if Conclave can hitch their wagon to the biggest movie of the year, or, certainly the biggest movie of the fall, then that's not bad. That's that's doing a lot of work for you. So
yeah, it is. And anecdotally, I've noticed a lot of the recaps of the night are using the image of Nikki Glaser in the Pope outfit as the kind of lead image for the Golden Globe. So there
Vulture
you go.
among
More,
them.
we saw that.
Yeah. Can we talk about Best Actress though?
Yeah,
Because
I mean that's when
oh my
when we talk
God.
about like the big film, the big winners of the night. The big winners was not a film. The big winner was a person.
Demi
And
Moore really, really delivered. I was so happy. I mean, I've been obviously on the Demi train all year. I've been doing a side podcast on Demi. And it was not only because Best Actress in a Comedy was truly up in the air. I thought Cynthia Erivo was going to win. I think you could have made a case for Mikey Madison winning. I think you could have made a case for Carla Sofia Gascon winning. I thought Demi had a chance, but when it happened, and then she delivers this note perfect speech that, like, anytime I talked about the substance and her Oscar chances this season, I was like, there is a narrative there about actresses and about, actresses who have been sort of done wrong by the film industry and who feel marginalized. And that's a powerful narrative. It can get seized upon. And boy, did she seize upon it in that speech. And she was composed and she was, articulate, and she didn't, stumble or stammer. And I thought that's a speech you want to see her get another crack at it at the Oscars. You know what I mean? Like, you want to see another one of those.
Yeah, that was sort of 10 out of 10. No notes, did exactly kind of what she needed to do and put herself in the perfect position. Like you've been being the drum. I've been a little more hesitant in a way that now I feel a little embarrassed. Not embarrassed, but like
it's
just wondering, like, is
race.
an Oscar movie? I was sitting there and watching Demi Moore's fingers fall off and watching Monstro Ilisu, and I was like, I don't know how this will play. But you're right that like this is an academy that increasingly is comfortable with things like that. We saw Everything Everywhere All at Once win Best Picture, which isn't that much more staid than
what's the leap from Hot Dog Fingers to
Monstro
Ilisu, really?
And then, as you say, yes, all the sort of, what we call extracurriculars really lined up in an interesting way. I thought she did a great job in her speech of tying the win into her career arc.
Yep.
And then both of those things into the themes of the movie, which was in a very seamless way. And it's very interesting the way that sort of she was able to do it, where and we saw this sort of with Robert Downey Jr. too, and a little bit with Brendan Fraser, where people are almost able to make being a beloved A-list popular movie star into an underdog.
Story. Yes.
Not wrong. They were
she
like,
was
well,
the highest paid actress
of dollars
in the world
on the cover
at
of Vanity Fair. But I never won a Golden Globe.
Yeah.
So aren't I, just like you? And you're like, yeah, like I do feel for you.
Yeah.
It is crazy how this narrative works, but it does work.
It does work. Yep, absolutely. And I think there's also the fact that there is some chaos in this category now. I sort of did a little like back of the napkin little jot down. I've got 8 names for Best Actress, and right now I don't know what order at all I would put them in. On some level, there's some who have a better chance than others. I think Mikey Madison and Carla Sofia Gascon have, really strong cases. But I have Cynthia Erivo, Demi Moore, Angelina Jolie, Marianne Jean-Baptiste, who just won National Society of Film Critics and like swept the major critics awards, Fernanda Torres, who won the drama Golden Globe, who now all of a sudden is, in the race. And oh, by the way, Nicole Kidman, who gave that incredible speech at Palm Springs over the weekend that's been going around on social media. What do you do? How do you make sense of it?
You don't make sense of it. You just kind of hold your armrests and hope that your faves get in. I don't know. I have no idea who the locks are in this category. I have no idea who the surprises are.
You can envision any one of those 8 people getting snubbed. Like some are more likely than others, but like you can envision a world where like, I can't believe that Mikey Madison didn't get nominated. You know what I mean? It's like, it's not likely, but it's possible. I loved Fernanda Torres winning, even if she doesn't get the nomination. Like, was one of my 17 best performances of the year was I think I'm Still Here as a contender in foreign language film this year. So like that's, and her mom was a nominee for Central Station back in '98. So it's like, there's a little bit of almost like a legacy there. So she's got a great story.
She's
great.
the Isabella Rossellini of South America.
Exactly right. So it's really fun. And I think obviously the SAG nominations will make a lot of sense of that, and the BAFTA nominations will help sort of like sort this out a little bit. But I think we're going to be kind of on the edge of our seat until the Oscar nominations. And as somebody who enters the Oscar race through Best Actress every year, you know what I mean? Like, this is great. Yeah. This is the best for me. I love it.
It was funny last night that they kind of presented the musical comedy award almost as an afterthought. They did it kind of conjoined with the Best Actor musical in a comedy, and then they gave Best Actress in a drama this huge weighty lead up.
Yeah,
when it was kind of like
is the other way around.
Haven't you guys noticed that like no, most of the top tier contenders are in musical comedy this year? But in a way that like I think really helped Fernanda Torres is that like her, you know, there was this huge wind up for this one category, and then she's the one who wins it. Like it just it kind of invests her with even more stature than you know, had they sort of placed them on a more even footing.
Well, and you look at like who she beats. She beats Angelina Jolie and Nicole Kidman and Kate Winslet, like Tilda Swinton, these like A-list availers, Pamela Anderson, who one would have thought she might have had the kind of narrative that Demi Moore has, and like in a different year, maybe she would have. Tilda, did you see the reaction when they announced the winner? Like Tilda was thrilled. Tilda just sort of just like hooted and hollered when Fernanda Torres won, which was great. You mentioned the actor in a comedy Globe, though. So Sebastian Stan wins for A Different Man. We've been kind of saying for a while that like that fifth slot in Best Actor is up for grabs, right? You got Adrian Brody and Coleman Domingo and Ray Fiennes and Timothy Chalamet, and those seem to be the ones everybody agrees on. And then people are like, Daniel Craig, I guess, for the fifth one. But like, why not Sebastian Stan for A Different Man? I know the answers, but I'm going to cue you up to give me the letdown.
No, I mean, I don't think it's impossible. I think it would be kind of funny in a way, in that one of the reasons that we say why not Sebastian Stan is it's like, well, it's an A24 movie, and A24 has a lot of movies. A24 has a lot of movies in this category in particular. And so it would kind of be funny, and in a way almost heartwarming, that like this little movie that they are not pushing certainly as hard as they are pushing Queer, Brutalist, and Sing Sing, if that kind of wound up beating, you know, one of their sort of more acclaimed, you know, gigantic movie star in a Venice premiere who's been making all the media rounds and going viral with everything. Like, it would kind of make you, you know, believe in award season again, right? There are always these little, it is almost like Christmas, where like periodically you have to like remember the real message of it.
Yes.
And
well,
get your idealism back in a way.
This is sort of what the Golden Globes do, because I wrote this thing this morning about the TV side of the Golden Globes, and we can mention the TV Globes for like half a second, but like they rubber stamped the Emmys, and like that's all there was. And it's like Shogun's a great show, and like I do not think that Shogun is not deserving of its awards. But what are ultimately the Golden Globe TV Awards? This is where I come back to again and again. The Golden Globes, whether they're handed out by the Hollywood Foreign Press or from the Golden Globes organization or whatever the hell it is now, they don't have any inherent value. They're not given by your peers or by the industry or even by like critics, really. You know what I mean?
People you've heard of.
Right. And so the value they have for the movies makes sense, because Demi gets up and gives a speech, and all of a sudden, you know, she has her big moment on the road to the Oscars, and everything can sort of be viewed through that prism. And, you know, people sort of are having their moment, and it's all part of this ecosystem. That isn't the case for television, which is why I'm like, just bring back the old Golden Globes for TV. Just like give it to Mozart in the Jungle, give it to Nip Tuck, give it to, you know, the True Blood. Why not? You know, at least it's interesting, at least it's fun. But with the movie awards, there really is a utility to the fact that like Sebastian Stan winning for A Different Man means that all the people who saw that movie and really loved that performance can now be like, yeah, he was great. I've seen so many tweets from people being like, see this movie, like it's worth it to see this movie. And it also for all the people who are like, well, he's got that and The Apprentice, and The Apprentice is the buzzier one, blah, blah, blah. Now, all of a sudden, there's an excuse to be like, well, now A Different Man has been elevated for the first time this season, I think, above The Apprentice in like the attention economy. And that could help him out. I'm coping at this point. I'm carrying water for this nomination because I want it to happen. But like, I think there are some good reasons why it might.
No, it would be fun. And I think, I mean, certainly I've seen more people, you know, it's hard to be, this is all anecdotal, but I've seen more people go to bat for that movie in a way that like a lot of people have seen Queer. And every conversation I have about Queer is
hedging and complicated.
Well, not even knowing if they liked it.
Yeah.
It's like, well, there were certainly good parts of it, but just kind of mystified in a way. And not saying not that it's bad, but it's sort of, Queer is a very slippery film that kind of slips through your fingers when you're trying to hold an opinion on it.
Yeah.
And A Different Man is, you know, a smaller film, much less heralded, but also you kind of know if you like it, you know that you like it.
Right. Well, and like in an alternate world where Hugh Grant wins for Heretic instead of Sebastian Stan, I'm probably making the case that like, why not Hugh Grant for Heretic? Because like his press tour has been going so well, and I don't love Heretic as a movie, but like some people seem to. So I think he's great fun in that movie. But now that it's Sebastian Stan winning the Globe, this is sort of, again, this is the utility of the Golden Globes for movies. They work for movies, and I'm fine with that. Do we think that it's sewn up for Zoe Saldana as it is for Kieran Culkin in supporting?
No, if only because I think for Kieran Culkin, it's like 99% sewn up, and Zoe Saldana is maybe more like 75%. I don't know. But yeah, I think it is interesting. It's funny to see what people latch onto, and if people kind of latch on to the crying and the coming up during the thing.
It did noted. It did. A lot of people were like, that's a lot of energy for the Golden Globes.
Yes. Which is, again, like, this is clearly someone who feels the same way about the Golden Globes that you do, and knows the importance of them, and kind of internalized these messages that, you know, this is a weighty thing to achieve. This is not just some random piece of aluminum.
But in the realm of like, we've seen this before, and like, this is when I've been around the block enough times to know the acceptance speeches that it reminded me of were like Kate Winslet for The Reader and Anne Hathaway for Les Mis when they won their Globes, and they were very emotionally keyed up. And I remember the kind of backlash that followed through their Oscar wins was like, oh my God, like, you know, people were a little, in a way that I kind of bristled against, where people were just like, God, Kate Winslet really wants that Oscar. And it's like, yeah, you would too. But I wonder if that's sort of, that similar reaction is waiting for Zoe Saldana, or if, because we've been through this a couple of times, there will be a little bit more support for her and being like, let's not do this again to, you know, dump on somebody for being so emotional for winning an award.
Yeah, I think in a strange way, like Demi's speech also kind of helped Zoe Saldana, whereas Demi spoke about being written off as a popcorn actress, and Zoe Saldana,
franchise
all of her interviews has been like, I considered myself a popcorn actress, you know?
Yeah.
And you can kind of understand why, right? Like Demi Moore is giving you a lesson why Zoe Saldana feels so emotional about this in real time, where it's, yes, like you thought that this was a branch of the industry that was out of bounds for you, and now you are getting this moment, and it's overwhelming.
And for a moment, we all forgot the Stan Wars happening elsewhere in that category with Ariana Grande and Selena Gomez. So thank you, Zoe, for that.
Yeah, exactly. She is the Switzerland of that category.
One of the things I noticed in the in our Zoom, or sorry, our Slack chat during the Globes was this notion of, is Brady Corbet likable as he's giving these acceptance speeches for The Brutalist? Is he turning people off by being sort of serious sourpuss? The director always should have the final cut and blah, 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 blah. Or I didn't get that sense, because, you know, Brady Corbet for me is like, oh, like it's the kid from Mysterious Skin and those Von Trier movies and whatnot. But you mentioned before that The Brutalist is more of a love it or hate it movie. What's the case for fitting The Brutalist with the black hat this Oscar season?
I think the Brutalist is very lucky that the other big winner is Emilia Pérez,
sure.
Which, especially if I have noticed some things online where it's the Brutalist is just a very straight white male coded movie.
Okay. Yep.
Which lets it get lumped with sort of all of these, which is certainly a thing that is helping it on the awards trail and is helping it sort of get these kind of instant hosannas. But yes, if you are someone who is maybe more inclined to have a little side eye to, why does this kind of boy movie
sure
be
this movie about a great man who built great big buildings and
who's made exactly I understand that.
It's also 3.5 hours, and some people sort of resent the idea of being asked to see a 3.5 hour movie.
Cinematic manspreading in a way, you could say. It gets just filled, but it's also, we're not in the 2010s anymore. Like, I think it maybe would be worse if this was 8 to 10 years ago.
Also, there is a sense of, this is the kind of movie that you really, I mean, it's the most overused phrase, but like the kind of movie you really don't get anymore. But it is kind of true. There is a kind of largeness to the movie that I think works in its favor, where it just feels vast and awe-inspiring. This maybe sort of makes me sound corny, but like I do feel like there is something to that, to the sort of grand scope of it. I think the score contributes to that. By the way, God love Daniel Blumberg, but it was so funny watching him sort of like, he cuts such a severe figure in the back with the bald head and sort of the piercing gaze or whatever. Every time he was in the background of a shot, I was just like, oh my God, what's happening? I don't know. I love The Brutalist. I think it's great. I would be very happy if it won Best Picture, but it's interesting to watch people who don't have as much familiarity with it now that it's winning big televised awards. Now all of a sudden it's in more of a wider public conversation, and it's interesting to see how people react to somebody like Brady Corbet.
Yeah, Corbet is interesting in that if you had just watched the Golden Globes, you would have no idea that he spent a decade as a professional actor
in like the most artsy little movies too, right?
He is not serving actor at all.
Yeah,
he is serving director. He is notes on the phone. He's not trying to charm you. He's not
right.
He's the opposite of Zoe Saldaña. He is just very
yeah.
In terms of whether that will hurt him, I think directors have their own rules. And I think the rules for directors are different than the rules for actors. And so I think Brady Corbet's general Brady Corbet-ness is not going to hurt him whatsoever. I mean, he's up against Jacques Audiard, who is also not exactly, Guillermo del Toro in the charisma department, or even Christopher Nolan, who was able to sort of,
he was charming last
role
season.
The sort of dry professor of the Oscar season.
Right.
In a way, in a way, Audiard and Corbet haven't yet found their kind of archetypes to fit into. They're just, well, I'm a filmmaker and I'm not good at this part, and you shouldn't expect me to be good at this part.
I guess one of the things that Conclave winning Best Screenplay did was it prevented one of the writer directors from getting another speech. He could have gotten to see, well, what's Sean Baker's vibe? What's Coralie Farge's vibe? Farja?
I believe it's Farja.
Farja. Okay. The Golden Globes were off on some other tangent. What do we make of Wicked?
A lot of people got a little ahead of themselves, declaring Wicked the new Best Picture frontrunner.
Yeah, I was.
But it was funny because a lot of the times I heard that from, it was some people who didn't like Wicked and wanted an excuse to not like Wicked even more.
Right. And now it's going to win Best Picture.
Well, this movie's a 7 out of 10. Why is it the Best Picture frontrunner? I hate that, and I kind of wanted to tell them, it's a 7 out of 10, and it's a Best Picture nominee, but it's not a Best Picture frontrunner.
Yeah. Yes.
And like, don't worry. Like, I don't know. Maybe this will come back to bite me, but like, I just don't. I think it's going to get a lot of nominations. It's going to be very competitive in the crafts. I think it's going to be pretty competitive in supporting actress.
Dune Part 2 loyalists are the ones who should be most angry about the Wicked thing, because I think Wicked is going to end up taking a lot of the awards that I thought Dune Part 2 would probably take.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, but I mean, you can say, well, it's almost all the same people as Dune Part 1. Dune Part 1 also really benefited from coming out in a pandemic year where there were like not a huge amount of competition for those craft trophies. So it kind of just was able to run the table. And like now that there are other big movies, Yeah, it's going to be harder. But yeah, I think Wicked's gonna do okay. I mean, there were some people clowning on John M2 a little bit for his speech, but you understand why he felt he had to make that speech, and that like they are really right. We call it like the prestige pivot, where you have to kind of make that turn from this is a movie that won a lot of money or made a lot of money to this is a movie that deserves to be hallowed as high art.
The thing with Wicked in that regard is they do seem to be sort of spraying out in all directions. So that way it's just like, this is an anti-fascist movie, and this is a movie about radical joy, and this is a movie about optimism or other things he said. And it's just like, on some level, go for yours. Because you're totally right. They do need to sort of like that is a little bit of a necessary pivot. I think there are certain corners of the awards watching world, and we'll probably put ourselves in that corner, who bristle at this sort of like, you know, radical joy or whatever. And it's just like, okay, like whatever, like cynicism is dead and we're happy to stomp on its grave. And we're just like, it's all right to be a little cynical, you know what I mean? I think that's a movie with a lot of variance. I think that's a movie that could get, you know, a ton of major nominations, sort of like, you know, acting and whatnot. But like, I could see a world where like it's just Ariana as the sort of top line, you know, Ariana and Best Picture, and then a bunch of craft nominations.
Yeah, I mean, I think I maybe disagree in that. I think the only kind of wiggle room is Cynthia Erivo in actress. Like, I kind of don't see screenplay. I kind of don't really see director.
Yeah,
and
Picture
right. And Ariana feel like locks, and then the crafts kind of feel like locks.
Yeah, you're right. Actually,
yeah. So it is.
I guess Cynthia is the wiggle room.
It is kind of going to come down to, does Cynthia get into actress? And if she does, then it's a good morning for Wicked. And if she doesn't, then it's a bad morning for Wicked.
Right. You see a lot of the Barbie comparisons, because now obviously after it wins the cinematic and box office achievement, which I was so Barbie positive, and I'm a lot more mixed on. I thought I was going to be Carrie on the banner for Wicked, and now that like so many people were so enthusiastic about it, now I'm the guy who's like, let's maybe pull it back a little bit. Barbie was another one where I think a lot of people were expecting it to get more, and then it got less.
Yeah, exactly. I do. Wicked in a weird way benefits from the fact that its IP is just a little classier than Barbie's IP. Which is that, like, well, you know, they're both IP, but you know, at least this is based on a Tony-winning musical that is itself based on a beloved movie. I can see people being a little less snobby about it.
Yeah,
in a way. At the same time, its expectations, I think, are lower than Barbie. And that, like, Barbie, we generally did think maybe there were times where we thought Barbie could win Best Picture.
Yeah, well, and
it was because it was huge. Because it was huge, the expectations were higher,
and it was paralleled to Oppenheimer all year. Yeah.
Whereas Wicked, my guess is that by nomination morning, we are kind of going to have a more calm picture of where Wicked is.
Yeah, if you want to kind of top line, what does this Golden Globes mean? I think it ultimately points us to Oscar categories where Best Picture for the win is up in the air. Best Actress entirely is up in the air for the nomination and for the win. That fifth Best Actor slot is completely like whatever. Best Director, I think, is maybe as wild and woolly as Best Actress is. You know what I mean? In terms of like who's going to get nominated. The best news coming out of this Golden Globes is like, this is going to be kind of an exciting next several weeks going into the Oscar nominations and maybe onto even Oscar night in March. So I'm cool with that.
Yeah, I mean, we've been saying all season that it's an unpredictable, wide open year.
Yeah,
in a way that like used to kind of scan as nothing's really jumping
nothing's
out of
popping.
But right. Now it's good in that it feels like things are popping, and they're a lot of different things are popping in a lot of different places, and there's it feels like there's a lot of interesting horses that you can back that feel like kind of underdogs, but that could surprise you. Like if you are a huge fan of Substance, you know, your next 2 weeks are going to be very, very fun. Like,
yes,
that's the movie that could get picture, director, actress, supporting actress.
I'm looking at this field too, and I'm like, what's the movie that I can envision being up there on the stage with the SAG Ensemble Award? And I don't know. Like, honestly, like there's a lot of possibilities there. I could see that where the place where Conclave sort of shows up, because Conclave has this big cast full of interesting actors. I could see it being Emilia Pérez. I could see it being Honora. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of ways where it could go.
Yeah. Even Wicked. I mean, that feels like a place where
big old cast full of, yeah, exactly.